Lalo, it's like, I was talking with you and you've mentioned that how you've been getting some feedback where we seem to be getting recognized, I guess, a little bit more and more with our shows and the program. And again, that's a credit to you and the team there. So it's humbling, isn't it?
It is. It is. And actually just my comment was more related towards the fact that, and when we go to conferences or live events, that's when you tend to find out if the show is actually even being heard or seen. So, good
Mm-hmm.
news is that it is. We were last week, Global Training Center exhibited at the ATC, the Advanced Topics in Customs Compliance, which is put on by De Leon Trade with Cindy and her husband Guillermo. And it's in Houston every year. There'll be details on the show notes if y'all want to do that. But we had a giveaway, and it was very humbling, And I said, I went up there and I was being silly, saying Global Training Center, this is a giveaway, etc. It says, by the way, we're also the team that puts on the Simply Ray podcast, which is surely your favorite podcast, and we got lots of claps. So there was a room full of people. So I'm hoping that was evidence that people do listen to this. And plus, when we were networking, people were greeting and saying, hey, and asking for you, Andy, saying, where's Andy? And, that kind of good
Yeah.
stuff. So they saw Anik and I there, but Julie, by the way, Julie was there too, which was a
Fantastic.
surprise. Yeah. So it was a surprise to see her there. Oh, and Cindy, what am I saying? Of course, Cindy was there. So Cindy was there. So we're missing you and Renee. So yes, that's the good news and everything. And so I pulled a couple of folks that went to the conference, and I said, hey, let's do our usual typical wrap up of the conference and come and tell us what you thought about the event. So here we are.
Well, we're going to bring in a couple of folks here that have obviously attended the conference. Just schedule wise and a few other things on my own schedule. I would love to have been down there, and I was hoping to get to some of the future conferences here. And it's going to be a little while before I'm going to be freed up to attend. But folks, if you are attending a conference and you see Global Training Center or you see Lalo or any of our show hosts, please, please, please come up and say something. It has been, we greatly appreciate you. And hey, tell us what you think, good, bad, or indifferent. So,
And not only
with
that,
that,
but also
yeah,
we may just pick you out and just interview you there. I mean, we had what we called a media center, and you can just sit there and talk to us, which is pretty cool. So, but anyway, go ahead, Andy. I'm sorry.
well, no, not a problem. Okay. So we have two people that have attended the show, and it's like first is Jill Roseman, is it?
Yes.
And I'll let you give your background here. So how long have you been in the industry, and what is it you're doing nowadays?
Thank you, Andy. I have been in trade compliance for 20 plus years. And as you know, with the amount of people that you meet, nobody really goes to school for trade compliance. We all fall
Right.
into it somehow. I had the opportunity to fall into it, started in chemicals, and then went on to pharmaceuticals in pet health and now human pharma. And so really have had a really great experience from everything from building import programs, export control programs, also have done some lobbying, some trade policy work, merger acquisition and divestiture work, and now just manage globally and just really like to build programs and grow people. So
That's fantastic. Well,
yeah,
welcome to the
it's
show.
cool. Thank you so much.
And then next we have a good friend of ours. She's been on the show several times. Darie, you're out in California, so it's I always say Darie, and I've heard others say Darie, and I don't think I've ever asked you, is it Darie or Darie?
No, it's Darie. Like I like to say, the Dairy Queen.
Yeah, there you go. Okay. Sounds good to me. So Darie Achstein, and you've added a Conway there on the end there. So that's
She's always had
what's
it.
the
Andy,
deal
you
with
just never paid attention.
I don't think anyone's ever paid attention to that. That I've had that for almost 30 years. I've been married to the same man all these years, and I don't know. All of a sudden, Conway appeared. So.
Okay. Well, that's good. Darie, so how about you? What's tell folks? I mean, you've been around since dirt, like myself. So,
Oh, feeling the love. I like I said, Andy, I've known you. I feel like since 1892, when logistics was actually the Pony Express, right? Yeah, no. So like I said, I've been in the industry, and if anybody says anything to me like, oh, I heard you've been doing this for over 30 years, I'll totally deny it. But clearly now it's on, it's being recorded. So we'll leave that alone. My background is mainly manufacturing and technology, many years in there. I am also a instructor for Global Training Center, which is fantastic. I've been with Lalo and Elsa and the team, great folks, for I think just over 12 years now.
Yes.
I think that's what that's been. It's fantastic. I love teaching, and I love what Jill said. This is not an area that, in 8th grade when they have like, professional day, like, oh, I think I'll go be in global trade and compliance. Like, like most of us, we kind of fell into it, right? I fell into it in, I think it was my sophomore or freshman year in college, just because I was the receptionist that signed the FedEx forms, and they were like, okay, here, we're going to teach you how to do imports. And, clearly that was quite some time ago. So like Jill, I come from a varied background of not just imports, a lot of exports, an emphasis in export licensing, mainly on the encryption side. And so here I am, and I'm thrilled to have been asked to be a part of this. So thank you for that.
Well, fantastic. With that, I guess in looking at it, was there at the ATCC conference, was there anything that just initially your overall impression of what you were challenged with there at the conference?
Are you asking me directly?
Either one of you.
We're probably going to have the same answer.
Well, no, I don't know, Jill, but this was my first time attending ATCC, and I've known Cindy and her team for several years, through industry and just through reputation. And I haven't been too blessed the last couple of years to go to some conferences just because of, work conflicts, etc. And so when the conference opened up, late last year, whenever that was, summertime, I really thought, I'm going to make a concerted effort to go this year. And I had been telling Cindy for some time that I had really wanted to come. And let me tell you, phenomenal. Was worth
top notch.
Every penny. The facility was incredible. The topics were incredible. The speakers top notch. I mean, like I said, I hadn't been to a conference in some time, and I really feel like I've done a disservice to myself because I haven't been out there, working with the industry and really, kind of doing that network. We really lost that during COVID, very sadly, that kind of one-on-one. And so to be able to be there back in person was everything. So I can't say enough about it. I will definitely be going back.
Yeah, last year was my first year, and definitely came back this year, and could not wait to hear everything about Trump 2.0. That's how this administration was referenced, and I absolutely loved it. 2019, Trump 1.0, Trump 2.0 right now. And so just great to understand, what the trade is doing in industry, also to network with people, just to find out how people are handling the trade war. I think that is the hottest topic in trade going right now. And what is your mitigating process? And as most of us know, the only mitigating opportunity is first sale for export. And so everybody's dying to know about that. And that presentation was excellent. And also they had a lot on the Section 232 and just Trump overall and the administration and the trade war and what the last year looked like. Again, the sessions were excellent. And I walked away thinking there's a lot going on in trade. What this has allowed is trade compliance always kind of sat in the corner, and people really didn't know what trade compliance was. And now everybody is interested. Everybody, CEO, throughout the entire. And so I think it's been the best opportunity for the whole thing.
And if I may piggyback off of that, like, you're so spot on, Jill. Like I couldn't put it more beautifully than you have. I mean, it's,
thank you.
Again, being in this industry for, more years than sometimes I care to admit out loud, coming into this industry so green and so young, trying to explain to folks what we do for a living. I mean, even like 10 years ago, I would go to a dinner party and start trying to explain to people I do imports and exports. And you could see the drool coming out of the side of their mouth, like, oh my God, that just sounds so fun. And then it was like, switch to my husband, like, oh, what does he do? He works for the fire department for LAFD. I was like, oh, okay, well, let's hear what he does, But to your point, especially with the onset of COVID, and then you have, all these changes currently politically wise and global and so forth. I feel like, especially if you're a young person coming into this industry, what a fantastic time to come in, because it's really such a recognized industry now. I mean, it's a blessing, if you really would, very humbling that I had shared with Cindy and her team, to really see these professionals coming together, what they had to share.
And also to add to the vast majority of topics that they cover as well
Yes.
at this conference. And I mean, there's EU updates for everything that's going on in the EU regulatory space. Also, there's one of our outside counsel teams, they do sessions in Spanish and talk about Mexico. And, I mean, it's like whatever you're looking for, to your point, Darie, is everybody, I think, walks away with new knowledge, new people to talk to, new people to lean on, new people to benchmark with. I mean, it really is just a great, great conference.
Yeah.
And that's the one thing too, is that with whatever your companies are, it's like, you stop and think for a second, it is overwhelming. There's so much going on. And so in looking at that with new people coming in, it's always one of those, hey, don't try and learn everything.
Yeah.
What is your company? What is the niche that you need to look at? And even if it's a global company or a lot of different, pick a lane segment that you need to become proficient in as far as your knowledge base. Delegate it out to your team if you've got one in there or whatever, but focus on those trade agreements or that lane, those countries in or out, so that you can become proficient. And you got to let the rest of it go, because there's no way anybody's even been in the industry for decades is going to get it all. So you have to pick what your I guess your expertise is, right?
And when you're going with your colleagues from your company, split up. Go everybody take a different track and compare notes. And the format of the conference is excellent. The app, they use this app, and you can download the presentations, and then you can ask your questions within the app, and they address all the questions. And if not, they address them afterwards. And you really do. Cindy, I can't say it enough. It's probably one of the best conferences out there. There's a lot of good ones, but this is probably one of the best. And fun too. It's fun.
No, well, no, that's the other thing I was going to say. There's some long days when you're talking about these topics, and it's like, just when you think you're like, okay, I'm done, then there's like this great dinner event, and then the networking event. I mean, to see everybody all dressed up for the 007 theme, which I thought was so cool. If I could go back really quick to what Andy was saying, though, I really appreciate Andy. One of the things I always like to in my instruction when I'm working as, teaching the foundation, if you would, of export or import. One thing I like to make sure that I tell folks is, give yourself some grace, especially when you're representing these companies. You as an employee of your company know so much more than what you think you do, right? You're learning the foundation of import and export, but you're really the teacher, if you would, of the companies that you come from, because you know the product lines, right? You understand what the end use is, you understand what the materials are. So I kind of throw that in there, in the fact that it was just so interesting talking to such a variety of folks at this conference that come from such a wide range of industry. And I really did miss that camaraderie. After the conference, I kind of like walked away going, gosh, after all these years, man, I thought I knew so much. And then you start talking to people like, this is, it really reminds you that you have to keep up. And so when you're talking to folks like Jill, in the world that you play in, or I was talking to folks from, some of the textile companies and so forth, and just how we have our own challenges and our own interests depending on the industry for which we represent. But I think the ironic part about it all is that fundamentally we all have the same questions, right? What's next? What ball is going to drop next? Like, no, what do I need to be up to date with now?
And as you know, I mean, that to me is, and again, talking about the younger people coming in, I get so excited and I get so passionate about this field. And one of the main reasons is, and I'm sure you can attest to this as well, is the fact that it's constantly changing. Our
Yes.
days are never the same. We wake up and go, what's going to happen today? And then, like you said, we are the experts in the companies that we work for, and people lean on us and they expect us to have the answers. Even in the sanctions space, there's just so many great areas and so much knowledge that we really do need to have in this field. And then to be that mentor to the people that are coming up in the field. I get so excited. I try to catch people when they're in college and I'm like, did you ever hear of trade compliance? And they're like, okay. So, we just get a little bit really, really passionate. Sorry, but we do.
No, we
Well,
do. And I
go ahead.
apologize, Andy. I feel like whenever I do go to a conference, my husband jokingly would say, is this like the prom for you? Like, is this the trade prom? And it's like, I kind of get stupid and giddy and like I'm packed a week early. I'm like, I can't wait to go and see people that know what I'm
Did you show
talking
your
about.
James Bond dress, your James
Yeah.
Bond dress that you were going to wear? It is my.
Yeah, there you go. Right. I'm sorry, Andy.
Well, no, I was just going to say, though, in trying to piggyback off of what you're saying, is one of the things I think is also important, especially for such advanced topics. Most of those kind of folks that are attending are going to be more seasoned, more, experienced, because you're getting into some very detail heavy topics. But would you also say that in going to those, are you recommending people then to, come back and put together a communique to your upper management? Here, the top 3 things or top 5 things is a takeaway from this that's going on right now. Here's what the trends are or whatever. But being able to communicate, taking the complex and simplifying it and translating it into terms that your senior executives, not that they're stupid, it's just that's not their bailiwick, is like translating it into terms that they can understand and say, hey, we need to be doing these things or whatever. What do you recommend as far as communicating to the upper management based on what you had learned?
And I think you hit it right on the head. It's translating the lingo of trade into layman's terms of what people are going to understand. And I think the trade war, Darie, you can probably attest to this as well. But the trade war is where, we're talking stacking tariffs and Section 232 and Section 301. And people are scratching their head going, what does this mean? And also people hear things on the news and right away panic and say, I heard this on the news. And that's just not the case when it comes to the trade war. And, I just focus on that because that is the hottest topic in senior leadership today. And, you just have to you have to just put out the fire and, just really help them understand process and, the way an executive order works and what tariffs actually mean and what these different trade war tariffs represent.
Side of the conference, what I find interesting in kind of, I don't want to call it a trend, if you would, but I think it's more of awareness. These classes that I teach through GTC, I've had folks more so at the director level and above that have been taking some of these classes because, quite candidly, they need to know. I had a very interesting call, and I won't bore you with details, but probably professionally one of the most interesting calls I've ever had with a gentleman who I'd worked with off and on for many years. And he's, at the VP level, and he called and he said, all those years that I worked with you, we talked about tariffs and we talked about this. Explain it to me. And this is a guy who's been doing operations for many years. And so I thought the conversation was just interesting from the standpoint that you've been a supply chain type person for all these years and you're asking me about tariffs. To me, that just really resonated, that what's out there in the forefront we candidly haven't seen in a long time. Now, Andy said I'm from Southern California, and one of the things that also I thought was so interesting, going back a little bit when we were talking about COVID, there was, if our freeways out here, there was more ships out in the ocean than there was cars on the freeway, and it was kind of like my own family was like, is that what you do? You help bring that stuff into the country? And I'm like, if that's what it took, sure. See all the ships out there. We help bring all that stuff in. Now, if you want to get a little more complex, there's a lot more to it. But you know what? I'll take what I can get at this point, Yeah, go ahead, please, Jill.
No, I was just going to say, I was just asked by head legal in my company to do a global presentation on trade compliance and really what it is now that there's attention drawn to it, because people just don't know. People don't know everything that we're responsible for. You say border crossing, but what does that mean and what all goes into that? What is country of origin? What does that mean? What is country of export? What does that mean? There's just so many different topics in trade compliance. We could go on and on forever. We could have this
Well,
podcast
you know
forever.
what,
You have one.
Jill, you're hitting on something that's really important, though, is that it's a huge topic in a sense. There's a lot of complexities, but if you step back and set a foundation, it's like, okay, here's what we're going to talk about. And you go with the basics, quite frankly, of, how the bill of ladings are done, how the commercial invoices are done and all that. And you get all that, and you want to make sure all that information is synchronized. And so that will help in the current processes. Now, then you go to the next level and say, now, when we're sourcing for a new product, and you're working with them, you're vetting a new manufacturer or a manufacturing location or a new product itself that's at the same thing. And you go through all those things and say, hey, it's really important that we work together, including the compliance folks, and bring them into the front end of the process rather than the back end. But you're looking is like, okay, purchasing or sourcing, we're thinking you're finding a location in this country. Okay, look at it holistically now. Are there additional tariffs? Are excuse me, the 232s and 301 tariff, extra tariffs being added into that? There are different things that going, back and forth. So you start taking all that into account, and then you're working with your logistics and all that. All of that is another level. And then you start looking at ultimately the top with the strategic planning, where's the executive levels, where are they taking the company? And you want to make sure that all the groups are working in synergy with that and say, I see some red flags with where we're going. Here's an alternative, but you want to support that vision, not deter from it. What do you think about that when you're talking about explaining what you do and where it's all going? Is that somewhat of a good outline with here's our current process, here's now what we need to do to ensure that we're vetting things properly for tariffs, and then the third level is participating in the strategic planning?
But I think that's a really great point. And again, what I mentioned earlier of, how our field constantly changes and how it really, truly trade impacts probably every business area of a company. And you have to find your partners, and you have to not sell yourself, but help people understand that synergy. So I'll use the example of procurement is key. Your transfer pricing team is key. I mean, those things, procurement, how are you buying? What Incoterms are you using? What are your questions as you're vetting suppliers? Then you have supply chain security, even HR for deemed exports. I mean, it's endless.
One of the areas, going back to the conference, which I thought was incredible, there was a lot of emphasis put on automation, and nobody shied away from talking about AI.
Yes.
There was a big, did you see that, Jill?
Yes.
There was a lot of conversation about customs and how they use AI to their advantage. There was a lot of discussion, at least in the, I was a party of one, so I tried my best to go to the topics that, kind of were overall. But one of the big pushes that I kept hearing about is how customs is really using AI to look at companies. They're using that to look at industries. And I really appreciated that there was not this kind of shy away from talking about the automation and what your companies need to know. There were a handful of comments I heard that basically went back to, look, if you're not using AI and your company's not using automation and your brokers are not up to date on their automation, or your carriers for that matter, or the partners that you're dealing with, whether it's a 3PL, name your poison. You mentioned the border crossing, right? Folks that you're working at the borders that are representing you. If they're not up to date, you're really doing yourself a disservice. I thought that was incredibly telling about how far we've come. Because again, as I mentioned, it's been a little while since I've been to a few conferences, but I've never, in all the years going to these conferences, have heard such a push for automation and to really make sure that your companies are up to date and they understand what AI has to bring. And I love, Jill, and this is something I always try and advocate, especially when teaching, is that, this really is a niche. Let's be very candid about it. We have a niche. very blessed to have this niche. But it's one of the few areas in corporate, in my experience within the corporate structure that I've worked in, where I've had a position where I touch every part of the company, whether it be legal, finance, quality, down to the logistics folks. Bless their hearts, I'm always telling them, we can do all this fancy stuff, but if you can't get it out the door, your revenue is not going to happen, kind of thing. Everybody plays an important part. So absolutely
Absolutely.
concur with that.
Yeah, and back to just add a little something to your AI. Not only is it fascinating on what AI can do, and everybody wants to hop on the AI bandwagon, but also, there's a word of caution when it comes to customs compliance
Yes,
that, you do have to verify.
absolutely.
AI is huge now with HTS classification, but you have to be able to substantiate what you're doing and to be able to do that effectively utilizing AI. So challenges there as well. As great as that is, there's still challenges, but very
Well,
interesting.
I apologize. To add to that, like I have a daughter who's in college, and AI is a big part of the curriculum now, right? And I was politely told, and I'll just leave it at that I better get on board with AI. So I actually ended up going back to school and taking an AI program because honestly, I don't want to get caught and left behind. So it really was refreshing to hear at the conference the time that I spent, the last whatever, how many weeks and months I did doing this program, that is certainly was worth it because, there is such thing as a certain amount of ageism, and you don't want to get caught behind. But boy, that was eye opening. And my kid in college has been politely like, you got to get on board with this. Like this is happening, don't get caught left behind.
Yes.
Before we go, before we go, I wanted, because we're running out of time, I wanted to ask you about the other part of the conference that I felt was very impactful was the policy part. We had a keynote speaker. Did y'all attend that? Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So we had former Mexican ambassador to the U.S., Bárcena, as our keynote speaker. And I mean, it was amazing. I thought I really don't attend the sessions because I'm always working. I'm working the media. We're recording. We're just very busy, and I attend very few sessions. But this one, of course, I attended because it was during lunch as well. But what it had a very big impact on me because of the way that people may not know what's going on in Mexico. It was very striking to me how she said that 70% of the Mexican Constitution has been changed. 70%. But I really liked her point of view also on USMCA. I just kind of want to get your feelings and your thoughts on that keynote.
Yeah, first of all, we never really like when they're going to redo any free trade agreement because that just means requalifying all of our products from scratch. But, and I did listen to that, and I'm not going to I don't really have much to say about that. I have more to say about just how she was talking about Mexico and the US.
Yes.
And probably the thing that I was most shocked about, I did not realize, and I hope I understood this correctly. And we did have a conversation afterwards, a group of us, when she was talking about how in the Trump administration, the cartel is viewed upon as terrorists.
Yes.
And I almost started to get a feeling of a forced labor act coming from Mexico into the US, proving that your manufacturing was not utilizing any way, shape, or form of anything cartel related. That, how would you ever do that? And I don't know if you had any of that feel from what she was saying about that, but I was not aware. I truly was not aware.
Well, no, I was just going to say, first of all, to go to a conference and to have somebody to her caliber.
Exactly.
I mean, phenomenal. I mean, hands down, drop the mic, period after the sentence. I mean, she was so incredibly well spoken.
Yes.
And so elegant in the way that she came across. It was really well done. And I appreciated how poignant she was, right? She was very, very on point, very structured with what she had to say. And what I really like too is that the way, De Leon trade partners, I like the way that they did the presentation. The fact that it was during like lunchtime, but they didn't serve lunch.
I love that. Yes.
When she was speaking, because, you didn't want to hear people clinging their glasses or hitting their forks and, people whispering among each other. I mean, you were really there to listen to what she had to say. And I also thought that the professor from Rice, forgive me, I don't remember his name, but that kind of that question and answer that they had towards the end, I
Yeah,
thought that was
Professor
really,
Tony Payan, that's who it was from Rice University.
yes, fantastic. And I really liked the presentation. But to kind of sum it up, the caliber of her being there and her thoughts and what she had to say and the pure honesty that came across with it, I really appreciated that. And it was, in light of what's going on with the industry and so forth, it's just so refreshing to have these open conversations. That was my hands down favorite part about this conference, was that there was a lot of honesty, tons of transparency, and a lot of tough conversations, really, just having with folks and so forth. And then you kind of come home and it's kind of like such a letdown, like Cinderella, she lost her slipper at the prince's house, and now it's like, ugh, I'm back on my island. Who am I going to tell? So I appreciate the podcast. I could talk about this stuff all day long. Hey, Jill, what are you doing later? I'll give you a call.
Yeah, give me a call later.
Well, it sounds like the networking, though, is another thing. One of the key things of any conference you go to, the people that you meet and network with, and it expands your sphere of influence, if you will, of being able to reach out to somebody that may be in the same industry, having the same problem, or you've got an issue and now you've got somebody else you can call and say, hey, how did you handle it? Or do you have any recommendations? That is so key in addition to the topics that you're looking at.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. 100%.
Well, as we close up here, let me just ask, what would be, I guess, your biggest takeaway, like your main point of action based on what you learned from the conference?
I was humbled.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know any other way to say that, because it really, kind of, I'm 4'10" if Lalo and Andy know, and I stand on my soapbox sometimes pretending I'm 5 foot and like, oh yeah, I've been doing this for more years. It's like Andy said, since the dawn of time, I feel like sometimes. But I walked away feeling very humbled in the fact that there's a lot that you still need to be updated on. I'm so glad I went to this conference, because it is a hard reminder that, you think that you know as much as you do, but you need to be present. And, to meet folks like Jill, and to see Cindy Allen and see Cindy De Leon and her team, and just the folks of this caliber, it really does. It heightens you. It just makes you better at what you do.
Fantastic. Jill, what's been your takeaway?
It's always good to be updated, and then amazing how you can see how much has changed. And, it would be really interesting to, do a comparison of years gone by on the significant changes in our field. And again, I can't emphasize enough, my main focus right now is everything trade war and mitigation, and how we can save these companies money. And, my biggest takeaway was walking out of the first sale for export session and feeling good about what I've done and what, the company has done, and with the support that we have. And then other than that, same with Darie, it's just the people, and just knowing and having a resource to be able to continue to see what's going on in the industry. And then you really kind of benchmark yourself against that. And then those connections. And that's another one of the things that I love so much about this field is you meet these people and they become your friends, and the people that you can just call and say, hey, what do you think about this? Or how did you do this? And it's just, it's so complex. Some of our topics are so incredibly complex. And so it just becomes so helpful just to be able to have that opportunity.
My last thought, one of the eye-opening areas, I would say, and Jill, please, I'd love to know your thought real quick, from folks that you talk to, right? Like I jokingly said, I was a party of one, but I'm telling you, I met so many people that came with several members of their compliance teams, which I think is telling. And to what Jill said earlier, right? Like if you've got 3 or 4 people from your team that comes, split up. You go to USMCA, you go to 232, you go to First Cell, whatever it may be. But I thought that was really telling, especially in light of, we hear about all these layoffs with different companies, and I can contest to that coming out of technology, more companies than I care to admit out loud, right? but there were large groups of compliance teams that were there. And I personally had not seen that in a long time. So I thought that really says a lot how much emphasis is really involved in the global trade and compliance, right? There's different forms of compliance, but the fact that, you had everybody from like the VP level down to an analyst, that says a lot, because not a lot of companies want to let their trade people, if there's 10 people in there and 7 people go, they're very weary about doing that. But there was a lot of that, and I thought that was incredible.
Yep, I agree 100%. It just was absolutely changing.
So we, as a podcast, we were able to record, I think, something like 13, 14 different interviews.
Excellent.
And we handed those over to Cindy so that she can use however she wants. So keep checking her website, the ATCC website. Keep checking the De Leon website, because very likely she'll be posting those. They're all pretty short, 5, 6, 7 minutes. I think Cindy's was closer to 10 minutes, but that's obvious, right? Because she was talking about her conference. But check that. I'll do my very best on putting those on YouTube, on our YouTube channel, so you all can see them. But like I said, they're mostly about the conference and other folks' perspective on this. And we did get some really good content. So hopefully y'all can get a chance to hear that. And again, just check the show notes. You'll find some nuggets there on where to go to and watch and listen. So, but yeah, that was it.
Excellent. Well, folks, I appreciate y'all being on our show. And to our listeners, again, if you haven't subscribed to us, please do so. Like us, share us, make comments, and pass the word around. But we greatly appreciate your listenership. And to that, folks, have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you, lady.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.